But right now we are finishing up on our book series on the book of Ecclesiastes, and today we're actually going to be doing a lot. We're going to be covering a lot of ground, all of the 8th chapter and a good bit of the 9th. This is the part of the book when Solomon is actually repeating a little bit of his stuff. He's not saying the same thing verbatim, but he's kind of going back and he's covering the same material, the same ideas, the same principles, and he's looking at them from a slightly different perspective. I believe that this part of the book was written at a different time of his life than the first part of the book. The first part of his book, he was probably a little bit younger, and now he's preparing to die. He's getting to the end of his life. He may even be on his deathbed, and he's speaking to somebody and basically giving them the basic life principles that he's learned. He's trying to share the wisdom that he's gleaned. And when you're dying, you have a different perspective on life. The things that may have mattered to you before usually take on much less significance, and the things that you may not have considered before, you're going to start thinking about them. We learn a lot about life when we think about death. And Solomon is here. He's getting to the end of his life, and he's sharing wisdom from his own heart. He wants people to understand the things that he's learned. Solomon was the wisest man that ever lived apart from Jesus, and he's got a lot of wisdom for us to share from. But today we're going to look at something that he's talking about, where how do you win at life. I don't know about you, but there have been a lot of times in my life, and maybe I'm even going through one of them now, when it just seems like you can't win. Where no matter what you do, no matter how you approach things, it just seems like you're always on the losing side, like you just can't seem to get ahead. Like there's forces of nature or life that are just constantly against you. And no matter what you do, you just never seem to be able to get ahead. You never seem to be able to win. And this is something that none of us really like. This has almost become kind of a nuanced part of our political process right now. I don't know if you've been paying attention to this, and I don't normally get real political, but the whole idea lately, every time you listen to a politician, what are they saying? They're saying we're losing, and if you elect me, we're going to win. My personal hero likes to say that if you elect me, will be so much winning, you will be sick and tired of winning, but we'll keep on winning anyway. He likes to say this kind of stuff, but this is what we want. This is what we want to do. We want to win. We don't want to lose. But what Solomon is saying here is, look, there are several things that you will never win at. You need to learn how to pick your battles. He's got 5 things that we're going to look at this morning, battles that you will never win, no matter how hard you try. 90-95% of the time, you're going to lose against these forces. And we're going to look at each and every one of them. And we're going to cover a lot of ground this morning, all of the 8th chapter and into the 9th. And the first one that we're going to look at is authority. Look at verse number 2 of chapter 8. I say, keep the king's commandment for the sake of your oath to God. Do not be hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand for an evil thing, for he does, talking about the king, whatever pleases him. Now, we all have authority in our life. We all have people that we don't necessarily like that are lording over us, and there's really nothing that we can do about it. The Bible teaches over and over and over again that authority is placed there by God. Now, it also tells us that we're not supposed to obey and submit to authority because they are better than us, because they are morally superior to us, but because God has placed them there. If you read through the book of Daniel particularly, you're going to find over and over again God says that he is the one that sets up rulers and kings and authorities, and he is the one that tears them down. An authority figure may be in your life because God put them there, not because they did something to get there. They may think that they're better than you. They may think that they are morally superior, that they are the smart ones, and that's why they're in power. They may think that, but God has a different story to tell. He says, listen, the authority figures that are in your life, they're there because I placed them there. I have a purpose for their life just as I have a purpose for your life. And when you rebel against that authority, whether it's in the government, whether it's at your job, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's at your church, no matter where it is, when you rebel against that authority, you're not rebelling against that person or against that force. You are fighting and you are rebelling against God. He says, keep your oath because of your oath to God. When you're rebelling against authority, you are rebelling against God. And let me also tell you, he explains here that no matter what you do, no matter how right you may think you are, and you might be right, you're still going to lose. Because the king, the authority, whoever it is that we're talking about here, is going to do whatever he wants to do, as it says in verse number 3. He does whatever pleases him. Verse number 4 says, where the word of the king is, there is power. You don't have power. The king has power. The authority is the one that has the power. Where did that power come from? It came from God. And who may say to him, what are you doing? I don't know about you, but sometimes when I've got an authority figure in my life that I don't like, and let me say, I've got a lot of authority figures in my life. Every single one of you as a member of this church is my authority figure. I consider myself an employee of every single member of this church. And there's a lot of you that I love, there's a lot of you that I like, and there's some of you that I just don't, to be honest with you, sometimes. That was a joke, okay? I'm trying to lighten up here, okay? Don't take me too seriously. There may be authority figures that you like, there might be authority figures that you respect. But there may be some that you're not too wild about. But the truth is that, and you might look at them and you might say, what are you doing? You don't even understand. What are you trying to accomplish here? It seems like they have no idea what's going on. They have no plan. They have no vision. And you might want to ask them, what are you doing? But who's actually going to do that? Because they're going to do what they're going to do. They're going to do their own vision. They're going to have their own agenda. And they're going to do what they want to do regardless of what you think. Nobody's going to say, what are you doing? He who keeps his commandment will experience nothing harmful. That's an interesting promise from the Word of God. Even if you don't like the authority that you are under, the Bible says that if you submit yourself to that authority, and if you keep the king's command, nothing will come to you that will harm you. You will experience nothing harmful. We go out of our way to try to lord over other people and try to pretend that we know what's best for ourselves, but God says that He's placed those authority figures in your life to protect you. Does that mean that they're all servants of the Most High God? Does that mean that the authority figures are all good people? No, they're absolutely not. Okay, and like I said, they're not an authority because they are morally superior to you or because they're smarter than you, but because God has a purpose for their life. God has put them over you to protect you. Now, the question sometimes is, all right, so what about if you've got a king or a ruler or an authority that wants you to do something that is opposing to Scripture? That is wanting you to do something that God does not want you to do? What if they are in direct opposition to one another? And this happens in Scripture several different times, several examples. You've got Daniel, of course, I mentioned him a moment ago, when they told him you're not allowed to pray to any god but the king of King Nebuchadnezzar. Excuse me, that was Darius, excuse me. You're not allowed to pray to any other god but him, which is a man. He certainly wasn't God, but Daniel, what did he do? He prayed openly, with his windows open, facing Jerusalem, where everybody could see him, 3 times that day, just like his habit was. In the book of Acts, chapter 2, I believe it is, Peter says we must obey God rather than man. God is the utmost authority. God is the one that's really in charge. He is the one that you must please. And when somebody asks you or forces you or implores you to do something, even if they are in authority, to do something that is opposing to God and His will for your life, you've got to follow God. You've got to obey God rather than man. But when you're not talking about that, and sometimes people want to use that as an excuse not to do what their boss tells them to do because I have to obey God rather than man. Yeah, but most of the time, that's not what we're talking about. Most of the time when you don't want to obey your boss, it's because you don't like what they're trying to tell you to do. We need to be sure that we are obeying authority because God says you will lose against authority every single time. You do not have the power to do it. But if you do keep His commandment, if you want to win with authority, how do you win? By losing. By recognizing that you have no power in and of yourself, and that God put that person there, or that force there, or that government there in order for you to be protected. And if you follow that command, you're not going to experience anything harmful. And a wise man's heart discerns both time and judgment, because for every matter there is a time and judgment, though the misery of man increases greatly. That word judgment there, if you go back to the Hebrew, it's really talking more about procedure. That's the word that is being drawn out there. For everything there's a time and there's a procedure. There is a just way. That's literally what it says in Hebrew, a just way. A good way, a right way, an easier way to do things. There is a time and there is a place and there is a procedure for us to do things. If you've got an authority figure, if you've got somebody in your life that is not doing things the best way, and you look at them and you say, I don't think you have any idea what you're doing, maybe you should pay attention to what I say. Does submission to that authority mean that you never speak up? That you never make a suggestion, that you never say, have you ever considered doing it this way? No, that's absolutely not what he's saying. But what Solomon is saying, listen, if you do want to win against authority, you've got to lose by looking at them and doing these things and suggesting these things in the right way, in the right place, and in the right time. I don't know, for me, every time I've suggested something to somebody that it was in an authority position over me, sometimes I did it in the right time and I did it in the right place, and sometimes I did it in the wrong way and in the wrong place and in the wrong time. And usually, if you do it in the wrong way, the wrong place, the wrong time, it's not going to go well for you. Am I right? That's just the way it works. You've got to understand how these things go. He says there is a time and there is judgment for everything. Verse number 7, for he does not know what will happen, so who can tell him when it will occur? This is his way of saying the king, the boss, whoever your authority figure is, that you cannot win against, they don't know any better than you do. They really don't. They're not smarter than you. They don't know the future. They can't guarantee anything any better than you can. The king doesn't know one way or the other whether what he's doing is going to be a success or going to be a failure. He doesn't know what tomorrow brings. But God does know. He is in control. He is an authority. Now, maybe if your boss is going to screw up, maybe the authority is going to make a terrible decision, and sometimes they do. But God is the one that's in control. God is the one that guides their heart. God is the one that tells them this is what you need to be doing. And sometimes they're going to listen, and sometimes they're not. But God says that the boss is not the one who knows the future. He is the one that knows the future. Number 2, how to win at life. You will always lose against death. Look at verse number 8. It says, no one has power over the Spirit to retain the Spirit, and no one has power in the day of death. I believe that every single person has an expiration date on their life. I believe that you've got a certain number of days, hours, and minutes that God has given you to live on this earth, and you're not going to have one more second, you're not going to have one more minute. And I believe that we are made body, soul, and spirit, 3 parts, just like God. And what he's saying is that when your spirit leaves, when your spirit is over, when God's done with your spirit residing inside your body, your spirit's going to go and your spirit's going to die. One way or the other. You can't control it. Nobody has power to retain the spirit. When your body dies, your spirit dies as well. Your spirit goes on to be with God, and you can't keep that spirit. You can't retain that spirit. You can't hold it in anymore. You have no power in the day of death. There is no release from that war, and wickedness will not deliver those who are given to it. All this I have seen and applied my heart to every work that is done under the sun. There is a time in which one man rules over another to his own hurt. Then I saw the wicked buried, who had come and gone from the place of holiness, and they were forgotten in the city where they had so done. This also is vanity. We can live our entire lives in any way that we want. We can try to dominate over another person. We can try to win. But in the end, we're going to die. And no matter how successful you are, no matter how smart or educated you are, no matter how rich you are, no matter how, you can go through the whole list, everything that Solomon accomplished with his life, at one point or another, you're going to die. And after you're dead, who cares? Who cares how successful you were? Who cares what you accomplished with your life? Who cares how smart you were? Because they're going to be forgotten in their way. Look at verse number 2 of chapter 9, because it kind of flips back and forth. Chapter 2 says, all things come alike to all. One event happens to the righteous and to the wicked. Whether you live a righteous life or a wicked life, you're still going to die. One event happens to the both. To the good, to the clean, and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and him who does not sacrifice. It doesn't matter how much money you give to the church. It doesn't matter how much you sacrifice your time or your energy. You're still going to die. God's not going to give you more life just because you're a righteous person. He says, as is the good, so is the sinner. He who takes an oath as he who fears an oath. This is an evil in all that is done under the sun, that one thing happens to all. Truly the hearts of the sons of men are full of evil. Madness is in their hearts while they live, and after that they go to the dead. But for him who is joined to all the living, there is hope. For a living dog is better than a dead lion. Now, I'm not particularly a dog person. I'm not a cat person either. And a lion is pretty much just a cat, but it's a big cat, right? So it's kind of cool. But he's saying here that, look, a dead lion is no better than a living dog. If you're talking about 2 living animals, I think I'd probably prefer to be a lion. I think I'd rather prefer to be bigger or stronger. I mean, nobody goes to the zoo and says, oh, mommy, I want to look at the dog, right? They want to go and they want to look at the impressive animals, the animals that you don't just see run around the house. And a lion, a dead lion, is no better than a living dog. And what he's saying here, the idea that he's trying to illustrate here is that when you're dead, it doesn't matter whether you were a dog or whether you were a lion. You're dead. You can't accomplish anything. Nobody wants to see a dead lion or a dead dog. But while you're living, you might not be a lion. You might be a cat. You might be a dog. You might be a fish. Who knows what God has for you? You're a person more likely than not. But God is saying, look, live your life to the best of your ability while you still have life. He's saying to the living, there is hope. There is something to live for. There is another day coming. When you're dead like the lion, there's nothing left. It doesn't matter what tomorrow holds because nothing is going to be held. He says, listen, if you're going to live the life to the extreme, you've got to accept who you are. You've got to accept your life. You've got to understand that God has placed me in this place in my life. He's given me this position. He's given me this power. He's given me this measure of success. And I've got to live my life to the most, to the extreme, to everything that God has given to me. A living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die. But the dead know nothing, and they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Also their love, their hatred, and their envy have now perished. Nevermore will they have a share in anything done under the sun. When you're dead, you're dead. There's no more on this earth. If you're a Christian, if you're a child of God, you've got way more on the other side than you ever experienced here on earth. But as far as what we're experiencing under the sun, what he just said here, when you're under the sun, apart from God's work above the sun, when you're under the sun, life is over. Life is done. So you might as well make the most of your life while you've got it, rather than trying to be something that God never intended for you to be. That dog is never going to be a lion, no matter how hard he tries. And you're not going to be anything that you're not supposed to be. No matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you fight, you're always going to be a living dog. And it's better to be a living dog than to be a dead lion. Hope I'm making that clear. All right, look, number 3, justice. Back in chapter number 8, verses number 11 to 14. Because the sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Though a sinner does evil 100 times and his days are prolonged, yet I surely know that it will be well with those who fear God, who fear before him. But it will not be well with the wicked, nor will he prolong his days, which are as a shadow, because he does not fear before God. There is a vanity which occurs on the earth, and there are just men to whom it happens according to the work of the wicked. Again, there are wicked men to whom it happens according to the work of the righteous. I said that this also is vanity. What's Solomon saying here? He's saying, look, if you're keeping score, it doesn't seem like serving God and loving the Lord and being a good person, it doesn't seem like that's the easiest and the quickest path to success and towards the good things that life has to bring to you. It doesn't seem like the righteous are winning. He says, look, the bad people, they get what the good people deserve. And the good people, they get what the bad people are deserving. He says, we're going back to the same idea that we talked about last week of karma, where so many Christians functionally believe that good thing happens to good people and bad things happen to bad people. But in reality, when you go through life, you're looking at it and you're saying, that doesn't really seem to be the case. When we look at people's lives and we say, when a good person, something bad happens, then we say they didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve that pain. They didn't deserve that suffering, that agony. They didn't deserve to die so young. But at the same time, the evil people, the people that seem to be getting away with murder, the ones that are getting away with terrible, terrible things that they do to other people, the pain and the suffering that they cause, they seem to be the ones that are getting away with it. And Solomon actually sort of explains what he's talking about here. He says the reason they get away with it, and the reason why so many people are wicked, is because justice is delayed. Because, he says in verse number 11, I believe it was, because the sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, because justice is delayed. I don't know about you, but if you've ever seen, somebody that gets arrested, somebody that does something that is very much wrong, somebody that commits a crime, justice is not executed speedily. It's absolutely not. They might be arrested, they might be, put in the tank for a couple of days, but they're not going to get the punishment for their sin for a very, very long time in most cases. They're going to get away with it, and a lot of sinners, a lot of people that commit heinous crimes do get away with it. They never even get caught to begin with. And what Solomon is saying here is, look, you're not going to win against justice. You can try to win, you can try to overcome, you can try to make sure that right is right and wrong is wrong, and that wrong people and sinful people and wicked people, that they get what's coming to them, but they're never going to. And if you're living your life in such a way that you believe that if you do right things that you're going to get an immediate reward, and if you do bad things then you're going to get an immediate punishment, you're going to come up short. You're going to be severely disappointed, because that's not how life works. You're going to lose against that battle. Number 4, God's plan and purpose. Look at verse number 16. When I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth, even though one sees no sleep day or night, then I saw all the work of God, that a man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. For though a man labors to discover it, yet he will not find it. Moreover, though a wise man attempts to know it, he will not be able to find it. For I considered all this in my heart, so that I could declare it all, that the righteous and the wise and their works are in the hand of God. People know neither love nor hatred by anything that they see before them. God's plan and God's purpose is a mystery to all of us. God might be bringing you through something right now that you have no understanding of. There might be something you might cry out to God and you might ask God, why are you bringing me through this? It might be a good thing, or most often when we're confused and when we're hurt, it's usually a bad thing. And when we're experiencing something that we are not looking forward to, and we're experiencing something that's painful, something that's hurtful, we might ask God, why are you bringing me through this? Why are you allowing me to suffer like this? God has a plan and God has a purpose for your life. Every single moment is planned out. We believe that God is sovereign. We also believe that God gives us free will and we have the choice to make. But I also believe that God is in control. It says that the works of man, whether they be righteous or whether they be wicked, are what? In the hands of God. We all think that we make our own choices, that we chart our own path, that if you follow your heart and if you wish upon a star, then your destiny is in your own control. No, it's not. Now, you can try to chart a path forward. You can try to plan. You can try to make a progress in your life, and you can pretend that you know what's going on, but ultimately, God is the one that controls our steps. God is the one that guides our lives. And you can try to fight, and you can try to battle against God, and you could try to go your own way, but God's going to get his way, one way or the other, whether you like it or not. If you look back in the book of Genesis to the story of Jacob, and this is a guy that was living his life the way that he wanted to live. God spoke to him time and time and time again, but he wasn't going to hear it. He wasn't going to listen to God. God was trying to get his attention, but he just wouldn't follow. He tried to go his own way and do his own thing, and he made a mess of his life, right? And finally, when Jacob came to Bethel, he met with God and wrestled with him all night long. All night long. God will not overcome you in your fight. He will let you fight with him. I mean, do you think that God had the power to overcome Jacob, to win that fight? Sure he did, absolutely did. Why didn't he? Because he wanted Jacob to come to the point where he would surrender. And that's exactly what God is trying to do in so many of our lives. You might wrestle and you might fight with God for hours, for months, for years even of your life. You might ask God, why am I going through this? And you might try to go your own way, and you might try to take your own path. But God has a plan, and God has a purpose for your life, and he's going to get his way one way or the other. He's going to wait until the time that you surrender, that you say, you are God and I am not, and I've got to get my life straightened out. I've got to take God's path for my life as my own. Jacob fought with God all night long until God finally slipped his finger under his thigh. And basically, I'm not even sure how it happened, what happened. It might have just been supernatural. The Bible isn't really that clear. But whatever happened, he wounded Jacob in such a way that he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. You can fight, and you can strive, and you can wrestle with God all night long, all of your life. But God's going to get his way one way or the other. You are going to lose that battle. And the thing that I fear in my own life and in far too many other people is that when we fight against God, we're going to be walking with that limp for the rest of our life. That limp was both a blessing and a curse because it was a constant reminder to Jacob that God was going to get his way. And from that night at Bethel, when he wrestled with God, Jacob walked differently. Not just literally, but he walked with God daily. He became a different person. He was actually called by a different name. That's where we get the name Israel. God called Jacob by the name Israel, which means he who wrestles with God. God is going to win. God is going to have his plan and purpose accomplished in your life. Number 5, chance. Look at verse number 11 of chapter number 9. I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to men of understanding, nor favor to men of skill. But time and chance happen to them all. For man also does not know his time. Like a fish taken in a cruel net, like birds caught in a snare, so the sons of men are snared in an evil time, when it falls suddenly upon them. You can lay out the best plan, the best path for your life that you ever thought. You think you might have all your ducks in a row, but one of those little guys is going to waddle off. One of those things is going to happen. Something's going to come along that is going to ruin the best laid plans that you might think you've got. He says that the race is not to the swift. You can train and you can run and you can be as fast as you can possibly be, and you can run even faster. But there's no guarantee that you're going to win that race. The battle to the strong. You can train and you can prepare and you can try to win the battle, and you can work with your sword and with your shield, and you can be strong and you can be mighty, but who knows what's going to happen? You're not necessarily guaranteed to win that battle. Nor bread to the wise. People say, if I'm smart, if I'm intelligent, if I'm educated, if I work hard, if I'm wise, then I'm never going to go hungry. There's a lot of smart people that are homeless. I'll just be honest with you there. There's a lot of people that are not necessarily stupid, that don't have what they want, that don't have the things that they actually need. Bread is not guaranteed to the wise person, nor riches to men of understanding, nor favor to men of skill, but time and chance happen to all of them. Now, we believe that, I'll say it a different way. I don't necessarily believe in luck. We just got through saying that God has a plan and a purpose. God is sovereign. God is in control. And I believe that. But maybe chance isn't necessarily the best way to explain this. But there are forces in life. There are things that just happen to all of us. And there's no guarantee of how life is going to go. There's no guarantee that your life is going to turn out the way that you expect it to. Time and chance happen to all of us. And you can try to lay out the best plans. You can have an agenda. You can have a career path. But God is going to have different plans. How many of you have ever had your plans changed? I'm pretty sure all of us can say that. We thought we were going to go one direction, and God said, I don't think so. You're going to go this way. And sometimes we think it's God. Sometimes we look back and we say, of course, this was God's path for my life. And sometimes, especially while we're going through it at the moment, we got no idea. Stuff happens. That's just the way that life is. You can't necessarily guarantee the path of your future. Okay, so these are 5 things we just went through. This is what you're always going to lose against. These are 5 forces, these are 5 battles that you will always lose. 90-95% of the time. And if you don't, it's because God wanted you to win that battle. But 90-95% of the time, you're not going to win against authority, against death, justice, God's plan and purpose, or chance. So how do you win at life? Well, a lot of it comes down to defining success and defining winning. Okay, because if you define winning by winning these 5 things, you're always going to lose. You're going to be a loser. You're going to be a loser. But there are 3 things that I got here for you. 3 things that you can win. These are things that you can have control over. These are things that nobody else can control but you. And the first thing is, the first way that we can win at life is by eating and drinking and being merry. Look at verse number 15 of chapter 8. And I flip back. Verse number 15 says, So I commended enjoyment because a man has nothing better than under the sun than to eat, drink, and be merry. This is the 4th time in this book that Solomon brings this idea up of eating and drinking and being merry. Whenever he gets depressed and whenever he gets upset and he says all the rest of this stuff is vanity, all the rest of this stuff is useless, it's a waste of our time, it's a waste of our energy, you can't seem to win, what does he turn back to? He says, eat, drink, and be merry. That is the theme of the book of Ecclesiastes, if you haven't picked up on that yet. Eat, drink, and be merry. For this will remain with him in his labor all the days of his life, which God gives him under the sun. Now you are going to lose the rest of these battles, but nobody controls what you put in your mouth more than you do. You are in control. I believe that God gave us food, drink, and enjoyment to enjoy. God gave us this life to love people, to love life, and to enjoy ourselves. Now, you might not know this by looking at me, but I enjoy food. I really do. And there are certain things, I believe that God created some food to look good and some food to taste good. And I try to pick one or the other. In the book of Psalms, chapter 104, I put this in your outline. It says, You cause the grass to grow for the livestock and plants for men to cultivate, that he might bring forth food from the earth, and wine to gladden the heart of man, oil to make his face shine, and bread to strengthen men's heart. God gave us food as a gift. I definitely believe that. And I believe that food is to be enjoyed, and that's why I don't eat things like kale. I don't know, does anybody, before I really get myself in trouble, does anybody in here actually like kale? Oh, seriously, communists. Maybe I got to backpedal on this one a little bit. No, I mean, my wife, basically the only time in my life that I've actually had kale was when my wife and I made the mistake of buying a bag of it. She was making smoothies at one point, and she was doing it with spinach, which I actually really enjoyed. Making fruit smoothies and throwing a good handful of spinach in there. And the difference between spinach and kale is that, number one, spinach is edible, and it actually will grind up, it will puree, it'll taste good. And it'll blend in with the rest of the flavor. But kale, no, it doesn't do that. You can blend that stuff for an hour. It's basically like you took a stalk of broccoli and dumped it in there. It's the nastiest taste, nastiest texture. If you go onto Google and you try to find recipes for kale, what are you going to find? Every recipe that I've ever found on the internet for kale says this is how you make kale taste less disgusting. And so I've got to wonder, why? Why are we trying to do this? Why are we trying to make our food taste less disgusting? Why not start with something that tastes a little bit better to begin with, right? Oh, but kale is so good for you. I don't care. Kale is a garnish. Somewhere along the line, somebody got confused. They went to the salad bar, and instead of getting the lettuce and the spinach and the things that they were actually supposed to eat, they took the garnish and they made a salad out of it. Somebody at Whole Foods decided that this would be a good idea, that this would be the next big thing, and they could make a fortune off of it. And the rest of us have had to suffer ever since. But there's so many different things that you can do with kale. People have tried to figure out ways to make it taste less disgusting. You can steam it, you can boil it, you can saute it, you can fry it, you can bake it, you can throw it in the garbage. That's my particular preference. But there's a lot of, and when you look at this, why do people eat it? Maybe I don't believe you. When you say that you like it, I don't believe you. You're a liar. Okay? But for the most part, people eat it. They tolerate it. We'll put it that. We'll tolerate it. I don't tolerate it. But some of you may tolerate stuff like kale because it's so good for you. Okay, that's perfectly fine. But what did we just read? you're not going to live a day longer, no matter how much kale you eat, no matter whether you drink bottled water, whether you wear your seatbelt, all the rest of this stuff, you're not going to live a day longer than you would otherwise. And the other question, even if you do believe that you will live a longer life, why would you want to? I mean, I'm not trying to get nasty, I'm not trying to get mean, but I've met a lot of older people, people that are not like in their 60s and 70s. I'm talking about people like, 90s. And some of them are delightful. Some of them absolutely are. I love Ella. She's even said this to myself, that she's nothing like all the other old people that she's met. Haven't you told me that? But so many of the older people, I used to work in nursing home ministry, and some of them are absolutely delightful, but the majority of them are a real pain in the neck. Okay? I love old people, I really do. But some of them, they just look and they act like they're not happy people. A lot of them. Some of them are delightful. Please don't say that I hate old people. That's not what I'm saying. But a lot of them, they just walk around like they're smelling their own fart. Like they've got this look on their face like, why am I still here? And I love old people. I'm not saying anything against them. But what I am saying, if you're going to take one thing away from this rabbit trail that I've taken that I probably should never have gotten on to begin with, if you want to take one thing away from this, understand I don't want to be old. Okay? I don't want to be 120 years old. I just don't. That's all I'm saying. Forget everything else that I said before. Church is probably going to be about half as full next week because of the terrible things I said about old people. On the other hand, we can talk about healthy food and all the things. My wife is, she's got this big jar of like brewer's yeast or whatever. It's some kind of nutritional supplement. Nastiest stuff you've ever had. Gross. Absolutely terrible. And there's different things that you can eat. I mean, most healthy food, there's some more or less healthy food that's actually pretty good, but there's some stuff that's just absolutely nasty. One of the things, have you ever visited the milk aisle? Oh my goodness, I mean, I remember back when it was like just soy milk. You remember that? But now it's everything. They make milk from everything. So many different plants. They went to almond milk, unless you got a nut allergy, and then you got to have rice milk, and then you got to have hemp milk. Have you ever seen that? Hemp milk? Okay, now that's just a cover-up for the marijuana industry, if you ask me. Somebody got caught, and they're saying, oh, no, I'm not growing pot, I'm making hemp milk. You heard that from me first, but I think the next thing around the bend is going to be beef milk. It's going to be just like almond milk, except it comes from living cows. It's going to cost $60 a gallon, and there's going to be a wait list. Just you wait. But there's also a lot of food that we eat that is not enjoyable, not because it's unhealthy, but just because it's nasty. Okay? Stuff that is very, very gross. Let me ask you, I asked about the kale. How many of you like McDonald's? Okay, a couple of you. And listen, I'm not saying that I'm too good for McDonald's. I'm not saying that at all. I've made that mistake a couple of times. The golden arches that form the end, that's not for McDonald's, that's for mistake. Okay? But I have made that mistake a couple of times in the last few years. Last time I had McDonald's was when my wife went into labor, and she went into the hospital, and they basically sent her home, but it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. And where do you go at 4 o'clock in the morning if you're hungry? Because I hadn't eaten since like 5 o'clock that night. You're really hungry. It's 4 o'clock. I wanted something to eat. So where do you go? Up here, you basically have one choice, and it's mistake, McDonald's. Okay, and I'm not saying I'm too good for McDonald's. I'm saying I'm not good enough for McDonald's, or at least my digestive system isn't. Down south, if you are hungry at 4 o'clock in the morning, you've got options for where you want to get your diarrhea from at 6 o'clock in the morning. You can go to Waffle House, you can go to, well, I guess we do have Denny's up here, but there's a lot of options. But up here, it's McDonald's. I don't know if anybody has ever walked out of one of these places and actually said, you know what, that was a good idea. I'm glad I did that. What am I saying here? God is saying that, listen, you need to eat, drink, and be merry. God has given us food, and He's given us drink to enjoy. And when He's talking about wine, and when He's talking about drinking, He's not talking about getting drunk. He's not talking about abuse of alcohol. The Bible is very clear about this, but I believe that God did give us wine, He did give us alcohol to enjoy and to make our hearts merry. I literally believe because that's exactly what the Bible tells us. Over and over again, that God gave us wine and He gave us alcohol as a gift. If you've got a different interpretation of that, you can argue with me. We can have a cup of coffee over that, no problem. I don't drink because I'm a pastor, and I believe that the Bible is also very clear about that. But for the rest of us, I'm just jealous of you because you can. All right? But God is saying here, look, you need to live your life in such a way that you enjoy your food, that you enjoy what you drink. For me, the strongest thing that I can have is coffee, okay? That's basically the only thing I can do, but I enjoy that, and I enjoy it a lot. And be merry. And look at verse number 7 of chapter 9. I'm almost done here. Go eat your bread with joy, and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already accepted your works. You can live your life any way that you want, but God has already accepted your works. He's already accepted the way that you're going to live your life. And the best thing that you can do right now is just enjoy. Enjoy your life. Enjoy your food. Enjoy your wine. Enjoy the celebration. Enjoy the merriness. This is one of the reasons why we're having this thing on Saturday, this dinner. It's not like we don't have enough dinners around here. We've got a lot of times. Why do we always get together to eat? Because I believe something happens when God's people get together to eat, to break bread. That's a principle that's taught over again in the New Testament. If you don't have food, nobody shows up. That's just my thing. I've seen that time and time again. If you want people to show up, you feed them. And we have a good time. We enjoy each other's company. We talk. We laugh. Sometimes we sing. Sometimes we watch other people sing. But we always enjoy it. And that's why we do this as a church, is because we want to get people together and we want to enjoy fellowship. And sometimes food is the quickest way to make that happen. Number 2, love your spouse. I'm already over time. I'll finish up real quick here. Love your spouse. Look at verse number 9. Of chapter 9. It says, live joyfully with the wife with whom you love all the days of your vain life which he has given you under the sun, all of your days of vanity, for that is your portion in life, and the labor which you perform under the sun. Live joyfully with the wife of your youth. I believe that God not only gave us food and he gave us wine and gave us merriment for enjoyment, I believe he gave us our spouses for that. And when we don't enjoy our spouse, is it really their fault? Sometimes. But most of the time, it's my fault. It's because I've got an attitude problem. If you want to enjoy life, if you want to win at life, you've got to learn how to enjoy your spouse and love the man or love the woman that you married. God has given you that person to spend the rest of your life with them. And you can't win at life unless you win with your spouse, unless you win with your marriage. Now, I believe there are some people that God has called to singleness. That's another principle. It's another sermon altogether. But for the majority of us, God has called us to be married and to love our spouse and to make the most of it. Got some verses for you there. I won't read it. You can read it on your own later on just because I'm well over time. One of the things that I love doing is just going out and eating and drinking and enjoying time with my wife. This Tuesday, actually, we're going out. We've done this every October 20th since 2012, something like that. On the 6-month mark of our wedding, we had 6 months before our wedding, 6 months after, and when we just continue doing it every October 20th. Anyway, and we do this. We go to the same restaurant. We wear the same clothes. Actually, I'm not sure that I can do that this year. I'll let you figure out why. But we just enjoy each other's company. We enjoy going out. We enjoy making these traditions. And this is something, I'm not trying to tell you that you need to do this with your wife or you need to do this with your husband, but make an effort. Really enjoy yourself. Enjoy your wife's or your husband's company. And number 3 is work well. Look at verse number 10 of chapter 9. It says, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. For there is no work or device or knowledge or wisdom in the grave where you are going. We're all going to die. You've only got a certain amount of time for you to live and for you to work and for you to accomplish things. And if you're going to do something, you might as well do it well. You might as well work hard. You might as well make the most of the life that you've been given. This is one of the main reasons why we kind of changed this event on the 24th. People got totally wrong idea, the spirit in which I said what I said last week about this event on the 24th. The only reason I really canceled it was mostly because I knew I couldn't do it well. If I'm going to do something, I want to do it well. I believe that that's a biblical principle. If you're going to do something, whatever your hand finds to do it with your might. Go all out. Pull out all the stops. Make it the best that you possibly can. Stop doing stuff half-heartedly like you don't care about it. If you don't care about it, then why are you doing it? That's the question that I've got to keep on asking myself and other people. If you don't care, why bother? If you're going to work well. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. Even if your job, even if whatever you're doing, even if you think that it's not for the Lord, all the work that we accomplish, everything that we try to do with our life, we are doing it for Christ. Whatever you do it heartily as to the Lord and not unto men. Whatever your hand finds to do it with your might. You follow these 3 principles and you will be farther ahead on winning at life than you would be if you ever tried to win on the first 5 things. I've got to close, so I'm going to close in prayer and we'll be dismissed. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much.